Ladies and gentlemen, I need to stop turning my mute button on. Welcome to the I'm way off. All right, let's just get started. Freaking throwing me off, man. You know what it is? Sometimes it's cold down here, and I'm not recording, and so I got my heater on, and the microphone picks it up, and it's just this, like, annoying hissing in my headphones the whole time. And I'm like, I'm just going to hit mute so I can't hear that in my headphones. So that's why I do that. Because it just mutes the microphone. It doesn't mute PC audio or anything. So today's theme, I guess, is rampant speculation. There's not a lot else going on, so I guess why not? The two bits of UDFA news, one of them's a little bit older. Julian Fleming did not pass his physical, which is why we were down to 89. I mentioned, it doesn't have to be that they're trying to make room for somebody else. And in this case, that was the situation. So he failed his physical. He had a hip issue, I guess. And then another thing that I had mentioned was probably going to happen, did happen. The quarterback from Canada, Wilfrid Laurier, is being offered a contract by the Green Bay Packers. So he'll be coming in and working out officially. But let's get started with a little speculation, shall we? First of all, the Pittsburgh Steelers traded away. It finally happened. We've been talking about it possibly happening for a while, and it finally happened. George Pickens was traded away to the Dallas Cowboys. Steelers fans are absolutely in hysterics right now. I've seen, it was like just a few hours before the trade, a Steelers person on social media was like, if we trade Pickens, I'm deactivating this account. And sure enough, it happened like immediately after that. Some of them are saying good riddance. It's kind of a whole thing there with, I think the kids call it cope. But in reality, the guy he's a good football player. He is a little crazy. And we have seen situations where guys that are a little crazy become a lot crazy as soon as they leave Pittsburgh. Steelers and presumably Tomlin do a really good job of keeping that stuff under wraps. So I personally am rooting for a full Antonio Brown treatment with George Pickens just going in and completely nuking the Cowboys. Just completely destroying that whole organization. On top of that, presumably the Steelers, how much speculation? It's speculation day, we might as well. The Steelers seem to be making some arrangements while at the same time going, yeah, we'll see what happens with Rodgers. It seems to be a pretty well-established thing that it's happening, and there's quite a few changes. They brought in DK Metcalf. They got rid of George Pickens. Maybe or maybe not that has anything to do with Aaron Rodgers. You could argue that Rodgers would be upset about that. You could also, again, look at what we were saying, where you got Aaron Rodgers with two of the most hot-headed wide receivers in the NFL, and a little bit loose cannon. Maybe that's not the best combination. And maybe that maybe we weren't the only ones thinking that. I don't know, Rodgers would be super excited about a guy like George Pickens, not necessarily handling Rodgers very well. I don't know. Again, it's speculation day. We're throwing out random crap. Beyond that, though, is where it gets a little bit interesting and hilarious. There is now speculation that after the trading of George Pickens, maybe they may trade for Alan Lazard. Now, when I first saw this, and still, it's one of those things, the language is so weak, and it's so like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Are we just doing this for clicks at this point, or is there something behind this? And it's not the only time we're going to be saying that today. But this is coming from Mike Florio. Not a big fan of Rodgers to begin with. Should be noted. However, would we really be surprised at this point if that was something that was being talked about? I think the real surprise here is that the Steelers would play along with it, but it wouldn't be a surprise that Rodgers would have some expectations, especially now that he has all the leverage, that word, because the Steelers don't have a quarterback. Rodgers can now start leaning in a little bit like, you know what, actually I'd like a little bit of it. You know who I like is that DK fella. I like that guy. You know who I don't like so much? That head case wide receiver of yours. I just, what do you think? He's not that good, right? Plus, you got DK. You don't even need him. Who needs two receivers? You don't need that. DK is all you need. Everything will be fine. Oh, you lost a receiver? That's freaking crazy. I can't believe you got rid of it. I was just talking. I didn't know you were actually going to do it. Well, it looks like we need a second receiver now, huh, boys? I have a suggestion. if you're interested. I mean, I'm just the quarterback. So, finding somebody that works well with me, I mean, if you're into that kind of thing, I have a thought. Here is how Mike Florio phrased this. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, Jets receiver Alan Lazard is, quote, in play to be traded to the Steelers. I don't know what that means. Per a source with knowledge of the situation is a good way to start the sentence. In play, I don't know what that means. Because in the I'm always thinking in like the weakest possible terms. What could this have possibly meant? And I would say it's not impossible that the conversation essentially was Mike Florio called a source with knowledge of the situation, which could be presumably somebody within the Steelers organization that he knows, and says, is it possible the Steelers could be looking to trade for Alan Lazard? And the guy essentially said, that's possible, in a sort of anything's possible kind of way. And that's the kind of reporting I do. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here. That's the weakest possible terms. But one of the things that annoys me is I know there are instances where this happens, where somebody asks a question, and the response is essentially, I mean, anything's possible, and they report it in a way that, let's say, could be and probably will be interpreted as this is probably going to happen. Does that make sense? Now, he did put in play in quotes, so I don't think you would quote something unless it was the wording that was used. So I'm trying to put in play in a sentence. Actually, I think an even weaker but very plausible possibility is that the source with knowledge of the situation could be a Jets source, and it could be as simple as he's in play for the right price, meaning there may not even be a discussion happening. So, my tendency is to downplay these as much as is humanly possible. Not because I think that that's necessarily what's happening, but just because I want to make sure. Because the reason I do it is because everybody else does the opposite. They read it and go, "Oh, see, it's happening. It's happening. They're in discussions and they're working on a deal to trade for Lazard, and it's happening again." And where in this sentence do you see that? Maybe, but I'm reading it and I don't read what you're saying. So I'm only going to know what it is they're saying. What I think it means could be a different thing, but it also doesn't matter as much. I know it could mean a wide range of things, and it's possible that this is something that's well down the road. But I also know something else, and that is Mike Florio and any other sports reporter is going to use as strong a language as they possibly can. This is why, by the way, and this has not happened to my knowledge, but this is why, by the way, sometimes you'll see one report that seems to say one thing and the other saying the opposite. If, let's say, Ian Rappaport contacted the Steelers and said, "Are you trading for Lazard?" and the Steelers say, "We haven't even called Lazard," then there would be a report the Steelers have not even contacted. And you look at it and it's like, Florio, you idiot. Like, what do you do? Like, that. Really, both of them are telling the truth. It's just that Florio's being a little snake and trying to make it seem like something that it's not. In play to be traded to the Steelers. The more I read that, the more I think about from the perspective of the Jets side, that makes a lot more sense. It basically means he's available to the Steelers. He's in play to be traded to the Steelers. Yeah, if, for the right price, we'd be willing. And again, that could just be anything's possible for the right price. Everybody's got a price. You want to give me 3 first-round picks? Sure, I'll trade just about anybody for that, especially on our frickin' roster. But again, once in a while, these things do materialize, and as more information about it comes out, then it kind of becomes, where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing. But right now, this is all I've seen, and I wouldn't put it past somebody like Mike Florio to say, how can I get a headline that Rodgers is going to ruin the Steelers? Oh, I have an idea. But again, wouldn't really surprise me. What else we got here? Just making sure if there's any non-Packer stuff. I don't think so. I haven't seen anybody else speculate on this, so I'll be the one to... I like to be the one to say, everybody calm down, but if nobody's going to take the bait, then I'll take the bait, all right? Because we got to take the bait on these things when they're just going to throw it out there for us. So somebody had called in I'm sorry I never remember, but somebody called into Packernet After Dark and mentioned how, I don't even remember exactly what was said, but there's a question of whether the wide receivers are maybe a little bit unhappy with the way that the draft turned out and are maybe not being super warm to the new receivers and are possibly a little pissed. I don't know, never thought about it, never really crossed my mind, but certainly possible. I mean, human beings all have different thoughts, feelings, emotions, all that stuff. You never know what their mentality is towards certain things. It's possible. Well, I saw yesterday on X, Jaden Reed posted, "Nobody said it would be easy, ... Now again, that usually when people post stuff, it's just some kind of a random semi-inspirational quote that's just, while they're sitting on the toilet, just something to think about, you know what I mean? I don't know. It ain't that deep. But we're going to make it deep, because why not? It's not hard to connect the dots here, is it? I probably don't even really need to explain how we get from one to the other. How drafting our current wide receivers' replacements, specifically you could look at a guy like Savion Williams, and the fact that he's now the new gadget guy, which is what Jaden Reed was, and, they're probably going to replace him as the special teams guy, because that didn't go very well. So we got some new people that'll be taking, Mecole Hardman, or possibly Savion Williams, or maybe our first-round pick, Matthew Golden, although, again, you don't usually like to have your first-round pick doing that kind of stuff. But either way, we have a lot of new options to be taking his job on special teams. And then, again, we got a guy that is, if nothing else, taking all of your gadget stuff. So even though he's the one that's clearly not being replaced in a way that Romeo, possibly Christian, or Dontavian Wicks could be, in terms of they won't be on the team anymore, because Jaden Reed is going to remain on the team for no other reason than he's a year younger. He's got an extra year to work this stuff out. But you could easily see this as a direct challenge. In other words, this job is not going to be handed to you. Nobody said it would be easy. And in a sense, that would be kind of awesome if that is the mentality, because at the end of the day, if you don't have this mentality, then you kind of feel comfortable in your job. If somebody isn't nipping at your heels, if you don't have to play your heart out to prove that you deserve to be on the field or to have these jobs that are being taken away from you, then there can be a sense of complacency. And there's always going to be complacency for some guys. Guess what? Nobody's here to take Rashawn's job. I mean, I like Baron Sorrell, but he's not here to replace Rashawn Gary. Zach Tom probably feels pretty secure in his job. Jordan Love is not really feeling super threatened by the Canadian quarterback from Wilfrid Laurier. However, if you're a part of a wide receiver group that at the end of the year, the passing game was horrific, whether that's the quarterback's fault, the head coach's fault, play caller's fault, or the wide receiver's fault, it's somebody's fault. And everybody saw all the drops, and everybody saw people not be able to do what they needed to do. We saw Jaden Reed fall off a cliff in certain games. And yeah, we drafted a first and third round receiver. And some of those guys do the same job that you do. So it's certainly possible there's a feeling of, oh boy. All right, we're already about the first break time, so we might as well pause there. We've got some more rampant speculation going on and some rumors that probably should be addressed. So why don't we go ahead and address those? We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So this one's a little bit more, this isn't even what I wanted. It's a little bit more out there, if I can find the right thing. And the only reason I really bring it up is because, again, this is one of those things where this is the way that some of these work. And this is not usually the more reputable media that would do something like this, but still, these are the kind of articles that you'll find shared, especially on Facebook and stuff, like, oh, look at what I found. And it's from, like, sports spelled with a Z.ZXY blog, it's nonsense. But I saw an article saying that it's being reported that Christian Watson could be traded. That's a pretty big deal. And what we all need to be doing is finding out what the heck you're talking about and where you're seeing this. Where that article came from is from a USA Today article titled 17 NFL Veterans on Thin Ice After 2025 Draft, written by Nate Davis. In it, he lists Green Bay Packers wide receiver Christian Watson and says, supremely talented, he's also missed 13 games over his first 3 seasons, and that was before tearing his ACL on January 5th during Week 18. Watson is set to, I'm guessing, USA Today, how do you not have an editor? Watson is set to a free agent in 2026 and could be an odd man out for a team that just took wide receiver Matthew Golden round 1 and Savion Williams round 3. Again, why do I bring it up? Because people are reporting that it, and this is just kind of behind the curtain a little bit. This is what potentially is happening with Mike Florio on a more, in a way that I can actually visually see what's happening. It's being reported that Christian Watson could be traded. That's technically true. It is being reported that he could be traded. But what that means is not what it sounds like it means. What it means is somebody wrote an article about, here's some guys that could be cut based on who got picked. And you find people that got picked, especially early, and you say, therefore, this person might be on the hot seat. And they could have picked Romeo Doubs or anybody else, but they picked Christian Watson. Why? I don't know. Probably exactly what they said. He's a guy that's been injured a lot, and they replaced his speed. He didn't say that, but I said it, because I could have written this article better than he did. So, all that to say, if you happen to come across some articles talking about Watson or anybody else being traded, there is no actual news of any of those things going on. Nothing of any real substance. Speaking of rumors, well, I shouldn't say no substance. See, this is where it gets to be like, I don't know. Let's actually start with this one. Let's start with Jaire, because there's a whole lot of noise, and again, what I want to do is go back to as close to the original sources we can get, and then find out exactly what the wording is. And with Jaire, there's so much going on. And a lot of the problem with this is, one of the equations is where there's smoke, there's fire. The problem with this, and this is a problem that even some people that should know better get caught up in, is they go down the where there's smoke, there's fire route, when really it's just a bunch of people regurgitating the same thing over and over again. It's like, well, I've heard 20 people say it. You've heard 20 people repeat what one person said. That's not the same thing. So, what we heard already, this would have been a little over a week ago, was from Rob Demovsky. And Rob Demovsky, who is a good source to go back to, he is one of maybe 3 guys that if they say something, you should probably listen, but also pay attention to specifically what he's saying and what he's not saying. A source tells Rob Demovsky the Packers and Alexander are working on a possible resolution that would keep Jaire in Green Bay. Right? This is the old report. There's a newer report, but I just want to look at this because there's so much mealy-mouthed garbage in this. Packers and Jaire are working on a possible resolution that would keep Jaire in Green Bay. Right? As somebody who is desperate to keep Jaire in Green Bay, who has since day one been I don't know why you guys want Jaire out so bad person, who's been ripping what little, well, I'm not to the point of saying that yet, but ripping what little, I've become that guy, ripping what little hair I have left. It's not that bad yet. It's happening, but, whatever. Ripping what little hair I have left in my head out. Can't believe I just became that guy. Just now, it just happened. That was the first time. Okay. All right, fair enough. I just cut myself a little deep there. Like, whoa, buddy. Where did that come from? I didn't know I had that down in me somewhere. Anyways, that precedes, and again, the 2 things next to each other, these are 2 good reporters. You could start to say where there's smoke, there's fire and whatnot. Jeremy Fowler. This is as of, I believe, yesterday. So again, we're about a week apart here. He says the Packers passing on cornerback for the first 6 rounds seems to signify, again, understand how nothing that sentence is before I even continue. No, it doesn't. Okay? The Packers passing on cornerback for the first 6 rounds seems to signify that Jaire is staying with the team, barring a unique trade offer or contractual stalemate. I hate that. I don't want you to start this entire thing off based on flawed reasoning. You're telling me they deliberately chose not to take really good corners, which of course a lot of Packer fans believe that, even though it's you could have taken so-and-so in the 2nd round that actually fell to the 3rd, even though we thought he was a first-round pick. Maybe he fell because nobody actually liked him. Maybe there's a reason we didn't pick Savone Revel, and it's because he's all busted up and we don't want to get another busted up guy. Anyways, allow me to continue. Here's the more interesting part. Again, I don't like that he started off that way, but this is where the interesting part comes in the second paragraph. The Packers and Alexander are working on a resolution that should materialize soon. Okay? So we'll leave alone the should materialize soon because, Rob Domofsky reported today could be the day for Jaire Alexander news back in March 12th. So speculating on how soon or far off this is based on nothing isn't relevant. What is relevant to me right now is what resolution? Because understand, a resolution, there's always been 3 resolutions. Stay, cut, trade. That's it. Stay, cut, trade. All 3 of those are resolutions. So what are we talking about with a resolution? What does that mean? That they are working on a resolution. He says, a revised contract for Alexander, due $17.5 million in cash this year to balance his injury history with his long-time status as an elite corner, might be the most sensible play. In other words, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what that means. He knows that they're talking and they're trying to work this out. No freaking duh. Again, I really hope that cooler heads prevail and the most sensible, rational thing, and I believe that this is the case, the best case for both parties is for Jaire to stay. The Packers are a significantly better team with him. Well, he's hurt all the time. Fine. The Packers are significantly better for the 5 games he's going to play this year. Okay, I don't give a damn. Well, we should just not have him for those 5 games because that's somehow better. Also, he might not be hurt all year. Don't make me bring up Saquon Barkley again because I'll do it. We're going to trade away Jaire. He's going to be healthy all year, and I'm going to smack all of you right in the face. Now, again, when you couple that with Domofsky saying a week ago that the Packers and Alexander are working on a possible resolution that would keep Jaire in Green Bay, it's pretty positive. And maybe I'm asking too much for them to just come out and say, it would be great if it was a little bit better for Jeremy Fowler. Say it with your chest, Jeremy. And here's the thing. If they can work it out with, and I think there's a good possibility the Packers are going to hold firm on a pay cut. I'm looking at it going, just forget it. Just never mind. It's fine. The good thing about it doesn't even necessarily need to be a pay cut, kind of, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the terms, but there can be a revised contract that gives him more money and makes it where it's like it's harder to get rid of him, because of the guarantees. Once you pay him, now it's guaranteed on the cap. So it's like, here's guaranteed money in your pocket today and some stronger guarantees that you're on the team for next year. But also, it's less money overall for us in totality on this contract, because you understand the total amount on this contract is kind of crazy. And there's almost no way that you make all this money, including if you get hurt, by the way, potentially. I don't know this deal, the way his contract is structured, but that's worth noting. And I think Jaire and his agent have to at some point recognize that the gap between what the current contract with the Packers is, if he earns all of it, and the amount of money he's going to make anywhere, including in Green Bay, is pretty substantial. And what the Packers hopefully are doing is getting him in and saying, we're still going to pay you more than anybody else out there is going to pay you because we want you here, but it's going to be less. And I can tell you, although I don't know which direction this is going to go, and I think a pay cut is going to be tough, any agreement in which he's staying and his contract is lowered is just, it's the greatest day ever. So we will see. My one thought, obviously you want to get this done as soon as possible no matter what. I mean, you always want clarity. If you want him back, then he needs to be back. If you want to trade him, then you want to be able to trade him. However, on Monday, the players are reporting for Phase 2. I have a feeling, assuming that the Packers are actually trying to get him back, there is going to be a push to make sure that whatever needs to get done is done by Monday so that Jaire can be with the team. Again, I don't know what's going to happen. There's still a trade possibility, a less likely cut possibility. We're not sure what resolution can come. Remember, one of the things in the specific report that they're trying to bring him back is the reason I'm phrasing it the way that I'm phrasing it. But one of the possibilities of a resolution, and this was, I believe, reported, I'm not going to go back and look it up, but if the Packers wanted to trade him, Jaire would have to be flexible on his contract. And so either way, there's going to be negotiations about this in terms of, look, we got to work on this. We'll work with you to get you where you want to go and all this stuff. We got to get you to be flexible on the contract. That's still a possibility, that's part of what they're working on, one way or another. Again, because if essentially we're just never going to work together, which, to Jaire's credit, it doesn't sound like he's ever really been that way. There was the report that they would not be willing to negotiate any kind of a contract reduction or whatever. But aside from that report, which again is probably not coming directly from Jaire, it sounds like Jaire is being very reasonable about everything. I mean, he was there for the virtual meetings. He didn't come to the voluntary ones, but it sounds like that was kind of mutually agreed upon until things can get fixed. He's been reaching out to players. There's a long list of people that I haven't heard as far as who have reached out. Doesn't mean that they haven't, but I have heard from multiple people that they heard from Jaire about things. So, I have a hard time understanding exactly what's going on. I mean, I have some suspicions, but at the same time, some of those suspicions are pushed back on by the fact that he just seems like a really good dude. He's always been a worker. I know last year, I don't think he showed up for the voluntary part, and I've always been in favor of when the doors are open, you need to be there. But his argument essentially was he believed that it was better for the team for him to be away because of the intense training that was going on there. In other words, I have these really good trainers that are getting me up to speed for the season, and I don't want to come back here for some simple handshaking and stretching and walk-through bull crap that you're doing with these guys. Not that it wouldn't be beneficial, but it's more beneficial for... So, in that case, it's like, whatever, fine. I guess I can accept that if that's the thing, if you're training. If it's kind of like a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers thing where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go smoke frickin' peyote, or I'm just old and broke down and I don't feel like it. I'm too cool for that stuff. I don't need that anymore. That's not a good enough excuse for me. All things being equal, I'd like you to be there. If you got a good excuse, fine. But, just the bottom line, in general, he seemed like a team guy. It's hard to understand exactly what's going on without having some suspicions that there's issues. Maybe it is just Jaire and the team, and that could be. And if that's the case, like I said, suck it up. You know what I mean? Figure it out, boys. If he's a good locker room guy and he's great with the team and he's a hard-working guy, and the only issue is like he's not able to stay healthy, you gotta figure that out. Anyways, let's take a break. Our final break. We've got two more big rumors and speculation. And should we care? Should we pay attention? Should we freak out? I don't know. But we're gonna participate for a little bit. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. So this is a relatively new one. This is who are you, sir? Andrew Filipponi. I talk about sports, and I feel like we talked about him recently in Pittsburgh on 937 The Fan. He says, source: the Steelers have inquired about Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs. Green Bay drafted 2 wide receivers, and Aaron Rodgers played with Doubs in 2022. It's believed Rodgers really likes Doubs. We'll see where this goes. I don't know, man. I can't pretend it doesn't make any sense. The fact that I remember his name, who knows? Maybe he was the one that reported about Pickens being on the way out or something, and in which case he's a good source. It doesn't help that the first comment says, just believe the complete opposite when he posts and you'll be fine. Oh, here we go. This is maybe where I remember him. Hopefully not the same source that said Green Bay was going to trade for Metcalf and Pickens. So, probably not a good person to listen to. He might be on a little bit of a clickbait tirade here. It's certainly worth at least bringing up. We've heard speculation about Romeo Doubs, and I don't know that a Steelers person would know to go to Romeo Doubs necessarily. Just kind of off the top of his head, I suppose it wouldn't take that much effort. If you're looking at Aaron Rodgers and saying, who are some previous receivers that would make sense? Heck, you could use AI to come to the conclusion that Romeo Doubs would be probably the best option outside of Alan Lazard. But, the connection is there, whether he just randomly made the connection because it doesn't take a massive amount of brain power to come up with it, or because it honestly makes sense. You did ship Pickens out, you are planning to have Rodgers in, and you want to find a receiver he's familiar with. Probably are not a huge fan of Lazard being that person, although supposedly that conversation has been talked about based on, over-reading into too much stuff. Maybe there's multiple calls being made about previous Rodgers receivers. I don't know. And then the question is, would the Packers entertain that? I have no idea. Again, do we play the where there's smoke, there's fire? Because I've heard about Romeo Doubs being in trade packages, like with DK Metcalf. The Packers maybe really are looking to move on, especially now that the draft is done and we've got 2 receivers. Maybe you feel a little bit more comfortable if you can get a decent haul for Romeo. Maybe you do it. Although the problem with that is you got Wicks, you got Reed, and some who knows if they can do anything guys. You know what I mean? With Watson being out with injury. I suppose it helps that you have so many. I mean, you're in a situation where, guys that you like Bo Melton and or Mecole Hardman, are not going to make the team right now based on just the amount of bodies that are there. And so if you did trade Romeo, even though he's maybe our best receiver right now, depending on how you want to look at it or whatever. I mean, he has been at times. I guess if you're asking me, I would just say keep an eye on it, but this is probably nonsense from a not very good source. And even if there is a shred of truth to it, the odds of something like this fully coming to term are, less than 50%. But it's still important that you know that this is out there, that this has been talked about, and we'll see what happens. But I don't want to do what most people do, which is overreact to everything. Oh, man, this is happening. I can't. Did you see that the Steelers called? No, I didn't see that, actually. I saw that somebody said that, but I didn't see the Steelers had called. But the final rumor of the day is in regards to Elgton Jenkins, and this one kind of came out of left field completely. I hadn't even heard anything until I was watching Packers Total Access, and they started talking about it, and I thought, what's going on now? And there's essentially 3 different things that I'm kind of hearing in terms of why there might be a problem. But apparently the initial jolt to this is the fact that he didn't show up to training camp. Now, I don't know who was there and who wasn't. I mean, it was primarily a rookie/volunteer. There was a lot of people I feel like I didn't see. And also, when we get to the clip, it sounds like they're saying they don't even know that he wasn't there. They just didn't see him get photographed, which makes it even more ridiculous to me. But there are a couple things that are behind it, and there's also some phrasing here that makes it, again, with this bull crap, just say it with you. Like, what are you talking about? I was ready to completely throw this thing in the garbage, and then I heard the phrase, there are rumblings. What does that mean, man? Who's rumbling? Who's saying it? Is it what? Are you just talking about people on social media? Is it you and your media buddies just like grumbling next to each other? Or are you talking about people in the building? Like, what are we talking about? Because so far, this is completely stupid. But this originates from Wilde and Tausch. So I want to play this. I'll do my best to not interrupt it, but I'm sure I'm going to fail at that tremendously. I don't even know if I've listened to the entire thing, but I've got the gist of essentially what I said are, and I'm probably going to forget what they are, 3 different arguments that I have heard in terms of potentially why there may be some problems between Elgton Jenkins and the Packers.
There are some rumblings.
There it is.
That maybe he has not been at the off-season program. Now, I don't know that for certain.
Now, see, I misremembered that. That makes it. We're back to being completely insignificant. There are rumblings he's not there. Is different than there's rumblings that there's problems, and also he wasn't there. There's rumblings he wasn't there. Yeah, maybe he wasn't there. Maybe that's why there's rumblings.
He was not in the pictures that were posted, right?
Juicy.
It's not juicy. That's not juicy. It's not. Right? I mean, usually when these things and these things happen all the time. People don't come, and then usually the discussion is, should you be there? It's a leadership thing, blah, blah, blah. We don't usually jump to, ooh, juicy, drama, something's wrong. No, that by itself is not juicy. We need more than that for it to become something that is juicy. Right now, it's just a detail, and we don't even know that he wasn't. There are rumblings he wasn't there, and he wasn't in the pictures. Okay, sorry. Let's continue.
A chance to ask Matt LaFleur. So I want
Who is saying juicy, by the way? I don't even know who that is, but be quiet.
to be very clear. I don't know
I think it's Tausch. It's just, what are you doing?
about his attendance. Okay?
But it's juicy. You'd admit it's juicy if he's not there.
If accurate,
No.
then it is definitely very juicy.
No.
Okay.
But he's got 2 years left on his deal. They just paid Aaron Banks a crap ton of money. He plays for a team that he knows they don't like to give out third contracts. He's got 2 years left on his second contract.
Oh, listen to these breadcrumbs. I'm at the
yes.
patisserie and there's
This is very, very flimsy so far, but please continue.
breadcrumbs all on the floor. And we're leading to some real juicy stuff. It's juicy.
If you're him and they have predicated their offensive line juggling on you moving to center, is there a reason for him to say, look, let's be preemptive. I'm going to turn 30 this year. I know how you feel about guys that are 30 years old.
God, I wish I had a picture of Hansel and Gretel that I could put up on the screen right now.
I think it's still at the Thunder Trio. So, do you have any, I don't want to say concern, because we don't know. Maybe he had stuff going on, and maybe he'll be there on Monday. But do you have any concern that maybe this whole plan hinges on a guy that wants to make sure he gets his before it's too late and he gets into the final year of his deal, and then they just say, okay, well, now we'll play Jacob Monk there instead in 2026?
You know, I was going to ask the question, and he just answered it in an absurd way. What is the backup plan the Packers have to get rid of Elgton Jenkins, who they love, who's one of the most talented and versatile players on the entire offensive line and on the entire team? What is the plan? And he just comes out and says maybe they're going to move on with Jacob Monk. Okay, no, this is going well. Please keep talking.
Or whatever it might be. Brian?
This is Balaga, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting. I mean, listen, I don't. If he is away because of a contractual situation, which again I have no idea either, it would be interesting because, like you said, a lot of these moves are based off him kicking to the center position, and he is a very important piece to this because he.
Yes, he is, which would contradict the idea that the Packers wouldn't want to give him a third contract, doesn't it?
He is a very smart player. He knows this scheme in and out. He's very...
Again, would contradict the idea that they wouldn't want to give him a third contract, doesn't it?
He's very smart. He's very talented.
He can't be expendable and the entire linchpin in this entire offensive line at the same time.
Talented. He's learned from a lot of good players about this scheme. Like, he was next to Corey for a long time. Mm-hmm. He was next to Dave for a long time. Like, he knows this thing in and out.
Correct.
So he's a very valuable piece to this puzzle for the Packers. So, and he knows that too. So if that is the play here, I wouldn't be shocked. And, the thing is, And the thing is, I wouldn't. If he looks to get a year added and more money,
So that's what we think this is about. He wants a year added. Okay.
I would do it. I mean, certainly I would do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I would do it.
Yes. Obviously, we see this all the time with guys who have 2 years remaining on their contract, who hold out for 1 year being tacked onto their contract. That happens all the time, obviously. I see that weekly in the NFL. I can remember, when Rodgers was held out for all that time to get a 1-year extension. You know, the ever-present 1-year extension. That's what we all dread, is when people hold out for that one extra year.
Yep, I'm Team Elton. All right, I've got a text message started.
Anyways, we'll leave it at that. It's not impossible. I'll grant, again, that there's so many different angles that I think counteract the argument. I think the strongest argument is to say he's 30 years old. He has leverage because of, like they said, he's extremely valuable, and he is a major component in this offensive line reshuffling, him going to center. You have 2025 and 2026 you are under contract. The dead money in 2026 is not very much, so if you know that you are relatively expendable, which again, it's kind of hard to make that argument that they would find Elton expendable, but you could get injured or whatever. It's not impossible that they might start pushing on, hey, about that third contract, boys, what do you think? It's also not necessarily a reach, because by next year, we would expect that those talks are happening. This would just be a year early. Do I think Elton would take it, or his agent would take it to such an extent that they would hold out? I mean, again, they may have the leverage to get it done, but that's a little extreme based on, I don't think he was there because I didn't see him in pictures. You know what I mean? And as far as the team doesn't like to give out third contracts, well, yeah, I mean, most people don't make it to that point because they go bye-bye. That's true. However, they certainly give out a decent amount of third contracts. I know somebody on their stream yesterday was saying, well, they haven't panned out. Fair, but number one, that doesn't mean they shouldn't have given, I mean, in hindsight, maybe they shouldn't have given them out, but at the time, it represents a good philosophical approach to make sure you give those contracts to those people. Why they've been on such a historically bad stretch with Bakhtiari blowing out his knee and whatever else, you know, it's unfortunate. But yes, it is, the third contracts are, I'm assuming for most teams, but maybe a little bit more even for the Packers, it's an exclusive group to make it to the third contract. I think Elton makes it to that exclusive group. Now, we have to see, because again, there's 2 years left, and that's probably one of the reasons you would bring this up, is because if you're 30 now, you're 31 next year, do they want to start a new contract at 32? I don't know. But that kind of brings up the point, would the Packers be willing to do it? I mean, you can hold out all you want. Are the Packers going to say okay and guarantee you a contract into 32, 33? I think the answer is probably no. I think you're fighting a losing battle there. I understand you have all the leverage in the world, but what are you going to do? It's kind of an unfortunate age situation where you got, I don't know that people are necessarily usually this old by the time, you know, I don't know. I feel like usually you're approaching 30 when you get your I guess he is still technically 29 right now. I think it's an interesting question on Elton and a third year. But I think this is a big year for him to show that he's deserving of that third year. Prove exactly what Balaga was just saying, that you are a pivotal and crucial piece to this offense, that you can handle at the level that we've been bragging about you we think you're a Pro Bowl center. They've been saying that since day one. Demonstrate that, and next year you will get that third contract. Right now you've been an oft-injured piece that's moved around and has been kind of mediocre for a lot of that time. You're not getting a contract into years 32 and 33 at this point. So it's a wasted thing to do, in my opinion. I wouldn't give it to him. I can't imagine the Packers doing that based on the fact that you think you have some kind of leverage and I'm just going to screw you over. You know? Oh, I see you didn't draft any centers. Guess what? Now I'm not playing. Pay me all your money. No, that ain't going to fly. So, look, if he's not there for mandatory camp, then obviously something is wrong, and maybe they're trying their hand at this. But boy, is this talk about calling your shot. If you just randomly happen to go through some pictures and notice that he's not there, and then say the best explanation is that he's holding out for a contract, and that actually happens, then kudos to you for nailing that one. Because from where I'm sitting, that is a massive reach. But for the sake of kind of going through it, What are some similar examples? Again, there is Aaron Rodgers, but obviously that was a very, very different situation. Much more similar, Trent Williams in 2019 with the Washington Redskins, 31 years old, sat out 2019 with 2 years left on his contract. Now, let me go through some of the details that are a little bit, at least so far, different. He sat out the entire 2019 season amid a nasty dispute with Washington. Along with medical/trust issues, contract concerns were a big factor. He apparently had 0 guarantees left on his contract. Now, that is a recurring theme, and that is the situation with Elgton Jenkins. He has money left on the contract. He's got plenty of money. The problem is he doesn't have any more guarantees. He only had, of this $68 million, only $24 million was guaranteed. That's a pretty small percentage. And he has earned, I believe, $35 million up to this point. So he has blown past that guarantee. So if we were to, let's say, obviously it's not going to happen, but if we cut Elgton Jenkins today, it's going to cost us $9.6 million. But that's not guaranteed money that goes to him. That's money that's already been paid that just gets tacked on to our salary cap. You could say deducted from our, from our salary cap. He ended up getting traded. Now, again, there was a very nasty and contentious situation, but you had and by the way, he was a 7-time Pro Bowl tackle. I like Elgton. He's not a 7-time Pro Bowl tackle. Another situation is Dwayne Brown with the Houston Texans in 2017. He was 32 years old. He sat out the Texans training camp and the first 6 games of 2017 in protest of his contract. He had 2 years left on a 6-year deal, but no guaranteed money remaining on those years. Now again, Dwayne Brown and Trent Williams are top-tier left tackles at the top of their game, which is a different situation than Elgton. They like Elgton. Elton's a good dude. He's a crucial part of this. He's a freaking center, okay? And he's a pretty highly paid center at that. He might be the highest paid at this point because he got, top guard money. And now he's being kicked into center. Which brings us to Zach Martin. Zach Martin was a guard for Dallas in 2023. At 32 years old, he found himself underpaid in a long-term deal, which was a 2018 extension. So that would be, 2 years ago? So that would be similar to if it was a 2020 extension. This contract was in 2022. We can check, but I really don't think 17, what is he getting paid? Is it 17? No. He's got $11 million in base salary, plus another million-ish. Pretty close to $13 million this year. It's 12.8, actually. I can see it right here. 12.8 this year and $20 million next year. Again, those aren't guarantees, but I don't think that's underpaid. So Zach Martin in 2023, again, all-pro guard, was on a contract, let's see, he was $14 million a year, was the average salary that he was getting paid. Elgton is not an all-pro guard, and he's making $17 million a year, and we're in a pretty similar time period. So, again, I'm not saying it's impossible. Maybe he thinks he's much more valuable than he is, but for a guy that hasn't been able to hold down a position, maybe not even his own fault, but he played tackle, he had a good stint at right tackle for a while, but was not in any way an all-pro tackle. He went into guard. He spent a lot of time injured, played right guard, left guard. He was really good at times. He was so-so at times. And now he's going to try a position where the Packers think he can be a very good center. He doesn't have guarantees, which is true. I think that's true for a lot of people. He is not at the level of some of the other guys that are not offensive linemen. Adrian Peterson with the Vikings. That's a whole other deal. Julio Jones with the Falcons. Antonio Brown with Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers with the Packers. Aaron Donald with the Rams. These are all top 2 or 3 players in the NFL at premium positions. Elgton is maybe a top 10 guy at a position. Zach Martin guard, maybe not a premium position, but clearly one of the best offensive linemen in all of football. So, maybe, but also if all we're going based on is I didn't notice he was in any of the pictures, I'm going to want to wait until Monday when he doesn't show up before we start talking about what the heck is going on here. It feels a tad early, but I will leave it at that. This has been your speculation report. Those are all the fun rumors, and we'll see which ones, if any, end up coming true. But for today, I'm going to be done. You all have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.